Unspoken Issues.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Unspoken Issues podcast. That's right. My time to shine. We are going to be discussing one of the premier comic books that came out for Image Comics 31 years ago. November 8th of 1993 is when the first part of this story that we're going to be discussing showed up on the shelves. And what story is that? Dean Compton's here to tell you. Even though it's my time to shine, this was your idea, if I remember correctly. You got to throw me a bone every once in a while. So tell me tell me and the listeners all about it.
Well, you know how Jesse is, so we're gonna do Ghost World from Dan Klaus today. So
didn't see it coming, did you?
Didn't see it coming. No, we will do Ghost World at some point, but today we're doing Killer Instinct, the Cyberforce WildC.A.T.s covert action team. They're not very covert. There's a lot of action. There shouldn't be an S. But they're going to cross over. Killer Instinct centers primarily around Ripclaw, Warblade, and a character named, I almost got the name wrong. I almost called her Mallory, but her name is Misery. I don't know why Mallory. Maybe that's a miserable name, but I was the old three: Ripclaw, Warblade, and Mallory. It would be like Sesame Street, right? Like one of these names doesn't belong here. Like Mallory, I think that's the one we can get rid of. But yeah, I remember not reading this. I've been looking for an excuse to read it for a while, so I didn't even steal this. I don't. Wow. I remember seeing all the hype for it, right?
Oh yeah.
The house ads with everything like ripped diagonally, Ripclaw, Warblade, Misery in the middle. And I remember thinking that it was like, oh, this is a huge deal. It sucks that I'm missing it. And it was a fun thing. I don't know if it winds up being as huge a deal as I possibly thought at the time. But it's a very fun 4-issue crossover with 2 prologue elements. It's Jim Lee at his best. It's Mark Silvestri at his best. Total fun. I liked it more than I thought I would. So, and yeah, we tease you about Cyberforce a lot, but I like Cyberforce. I like Mark Silvestri. I like Jim Lee. I like WildC.A.T.s. Even if sometimes I don't always like the stories, I like the ideas. I like the designs. I like the action. I like the dynamic nature of it. So it's great to see. I think this was a fun romp. I would definitely describe this as a popcorn comic. There's a couple times you're gonna have to be like, well, okay. But it doesn't make anything any worse for the wearer. And the thing is, if you're into guys who have very sharp appendages, the only way you can do better is to pick up that comic with the guy from the Knife Carnage concert in Madison Square Garden. That guy, he was very sharp too, had that knife, right? Just ready to go. Ripclaw
right out the gate.
Very sharp, ready to go. So yeah, I think that's the only one place you can get something sharper. What'd you say, sir?
Right out the gate, you didn't want to miss it.
Right.
No, you didn't.
No, that's perfect spot.
I got to keep everybody guessing.
That's true.
You can't be waiting.
There's not going to be any Cyberforce jokes today. Where would you put them in, right? Like, it's a joke about Cyberforce. So let's get that one done, and now we can get down to serious business, because this comic book is serious business, right? It acts very serious. People snarl, teeth are gritted, blood is spilled. This is serious business.
Yes, it is.
You can tell because they use a lot of acronyms. They can't say around the clock. It's ATC.
If you just took all of the small boxes and put them on one page, you would have legit one page full of acronyms and explanations as to what they are.
Somebody went to the Army Navy surplus store and bought one of those books of military jingo. And he said, hey, listen, this cost me $4.95 and I will get $4.95 worth out of it. At one point, they're like PR. What's that? Like photo reconnaissance or something. Bro, that's public relations. Quick. But yeah, it's a romp. It's a lot of fun, and it's always nice to share something that the 90s are great. Okay, 90s comics are great, but they run the gamut, and sometimes on here we're like, hey, let's show you some stuff that you might have missed that's really good. Sometimes let's really capture the era. Let's capture a certain feel, certain time, and this is one of those that captures that time and place. Do I think this is a must-read for anyone? Absolutely not. Do I think if you're an X-Men fan or Jim Lee fan or Mark Silvestri fan or fan of that era of comics, you need to check it out.
You mentioned the word hype, and wow, was I excited about this crossover happening.
Well, you had to be, right?
Right. This is Jim Lee. This is Mark Silvestri, folks. These two guys who have made their name
right
in Marvel Comics are now over here, and we're trying to put a universe together. And these two minds are going to come together. These two, they're going to spill out on the page. Not to give, we definitely don't want to short shrift Eric Serge Silvestri here, because he's the one writing Cyberforce at the time. But
and isn't Brandon Choi co-writing the Wildcats? Is he's around at this point? Yeah. I don't want to shortchange him either. You can definitely feel their impact. But let's put it in perspective. In 1992, the number one selling comic book was Superman number 75, and it wasn't close. Me racing an F1 Formula car, not close. You know, like, let's go. Oh my God, they're in Wyoming. I am still at my house. But number two, and much closer than you'd think, even though it wasn't close, it's Wildcats number one. And that's in an era of Spawn, a lot of big Marvel stuff. And all three of the first three issues of Wildcats made the top, like 55, 60. People loved Jim Lee. You could not get enough Jim Lee. Rob Liefeld had the commercial, but somehow Jim Lee had pierced the I guess the semi-mainstream, for lack of a better term, purely because he was just that good and that exciting. So yeah, you had to see this. It's Jim Lee's Wildcats. It's Mark Silvestri's Cyberforce. And you're not going to miss it. Anybody who had missed it around the first time around, that image, the 92 launch, they weren't going to miss this.
Yeah,
it's Cyberforce number one. It's volume 2. You got to get on. This is it, right? Get on here. Jump on now.
Well, no, wrong guys. I kind of wanted to just throw in here what was happening with me at this time in 93. So I didn't have a whole lot of friends that I could count on to talk comics with. Those that did know comics knew your big two, Marvel and DC. But no one at my school was talking about Image Comics. I was. And pretty much. I mean, no, I was, guys, check this out. Whatever I could get my hands on and show these people, I would. But legitimately, it was a small handful of people, and they were still reading stuff from Marvel and DC. So I felt I was on the cutting edge. This is the cutting edge. This is, my goodness, we got some unbelievable art that's happening in this universe. And I wanted to be a part of it so much. I think that's why one of the reasons why I gravitate towards Cyberforce and Wildcats, because I was right there on that ground level when this hit. And
you didn't have to memorize a bunch of trading cards from 30 years of continuity, or in DC's case, I mean, Jesus Christ, at that point, almost like 60 years, 55 years or whatever. I mean, it's just like, hey, what do you want to know about Cyberforce? Well, at this point, there's 5 issues and there's 4 guest appearances or whatever there was.
Yeah. Darry, you've been quiet. We mentioned hype. 93. Are you hearing the hype about Wildcats and Cyberforce?
No, but I was obsessed with Jim Lee. If I saw it on the newsstand or could get it, I definitely had Wildcats. I read every issue of Wildcats at some point over the years. I'd still get it. DC just put out a new book a couple of months ago. I think I was the only person in my shop getting it, but I love the Wildcats. I'm obsessed with Jim Lee, and I have been since the very beginning.
A new ongoing?
It lasted 12 issues. I don't know if it was supposed to be an ongoing. It was terrible. It was not very good, but it wasn't bad. This is a really awful thing. It was just not, when it got canceled, I wasn't surprised.
Sure.
But it was nice to see them back. And it's always nice to see all the ways that Grifter is not Batman. But no, I read Killer Instinct years after the fact, just like Dean said, going through the high points. What did I miss? What did I go through? And I have nothing bad to say about Cyberforce. Though I will say, this early on in their career, wow, are they the X-Men? I mean, literally, their headquarters is literally in suburban Westchester.
County, what are you doing? You don't even live there, man. There's no excuse. I mean, I'm not trying to bash anybody, but bro, this could be anywhere. You could put them in Japan or Wyoming or Buenos Aires or Malibu, where you live and know something about. You're not from. What the hell's going on? You're like, hey, I know how everybody's comparing these guys to the X-Men, and I think the best way, there are only 2 ways to deal with it. Either throw them off a little bit, do some things different, or just steer right into the skin. Here comes Cyberforce's arch enemy, Fragnito. He's the master of frag. He'll frag you. Lobos and what are you doing? Fragging bastards, you stealing my thing,
Oh man. Yeah, so
Wildcats are also the X-Men, but you forget how they're the X-Men when Cyberforce shows up. All of a sudden, Wildcats is a fresh, original idea. And this is where you have Storm, Void comforting someone, calling her child and all this stuff, very Storm-esque. And you just forget that, oh man. To be fair, both of these groups would grow into something different, wouldn't you say, Darry?
Yeah, I definitely would. I know Silvestri didn't spend as much time on Cyberforce as Lee and other creators did on Wildcats. But yeah, I think they outgrew their roots, if for no other reason than it was just them. They didn't have to worry about the next big crossover or whatever. I think Mark Silvestri still puts out Cyberforce comics when he gets around to it. But
and then later on, Ripclaw and those guys become important with, you've mentioned, the Darkness and Witchblade in a different way. Wildcats eventually is, you look at, I haven't had a chance to read it, but I've heard the Joe Casey run is a complete inversion and reinvention of what superhero comics can and should be. So even in 20 issues from here, Alan Moore is going to take over and throw put the whole thing on its head. And I don't care if he's a Superman ripoff. I like Mr. Majestic, and I just want to say that right now. I don't know when we're going to talk about Mr. Majestic again, but I don't give a shit. That's a cool name.
I am obsessed with Mr. Majestic. And you mentioned Alan Moore, and his run on Wildcats is probably the best Wildcat story of all time. But Alan Moore did a one-shot featuring Mr. Majestic very early on about that character surviving the heat death of the universe. That's one of my favorite things Alan Moore has ever written. It makes me miss Wildstorm every time I think about it. But,
I'm going to read that tonight. I have that. I skimmed it, but I'm going to read it. We'll cover it sometime. We'll do an extra.
Flawless.
Patreon only. We don't even have a Patreon.
We don't even have a Patreon. Yeah, we're going to put it on someone else's Patreon.
Right.
But what are you guys doing here?
Wildcats 3.0 was really good because the Wildcats were not really being used, and Joe Casey comes in and says, I'm going to make Halo Corporation good. The whole thing is they wake up, they decide Halo is a company with unlimited resources and unlimited technology because it was founded by immortal alien gods that crashed here before we had democracy. And they're like, okay, we're just going to use this company to better humanity. And the book is all about the entrenched powers of humanity being like, well, we don't like that you're trying to give free energy and free technology and free everything else to the rest of the world. And the surviving Wildcats are like, that's too bad. We're going to do it anyway. And it goes on over the course of a couple of years. And it's great. It's weird. Joe Casey's got a lot of eccentricities I don't always feel like reading about, but overall it's really good. And if he had just wrapped it up a little bit, I think it's something that people would talk more about. But I was getting it when it hit the stands, man. And I remember it was always towards the top of that pile.
Matthew Price, the Speeding Bullet Comics, sbcomics.com. Look for him on Facebook, or if you're in Norman, Oklahoma, or even within spitting distance, you should drive and buy something from them. But he mentioned that run to me, and he goes, it's a complete, you'll rethink what superheroes should do and should be. And I think he thinks it's better than the Alan Moore run, but don't quote me on that. We've had a lot of talks about Wildcats, so I could be all running together. I talk about Wildcats a lot for someone who's probably only read 15 issues of Wildcats comics ever. I like the way they look, and I don't need much more than that. I think they're cool. I think they just fit into my headcanon neatly to the point where, since I didn't get it back in the day, I just pick it up here and then. But I'm going to read that, Mr. Majestic.
The Wildcats have a great pitch. You mentioned before the covert action teams for some reason,
right?
And all that's nonsense. But the core of the characters, the very core of the team, is this idea that technically they are going around. They are unknown superhuman terrorists, and they are shooting and attacking people that to the third party look completely normal, but only their former stripper teammate knows is an evil immortal alien.
Right.
Hiding in them. And that was always something that appealed to me when I would think about it, because I was like, this is insane. If the X-Men started attacking random humans on the street, they'd be like, oh, okay, this is why we built those giant purple robots to kill y'all.
Right.
And here it's like, no, we're not trying to be heroes. We're trying to kill that alien, and then we're going to immediately disappear. Even the robot's wearing a mask. So, and that's not in as many stories as you want. They they are superhero comics, but again, it really has this concept where if you get someone like Alan Moore, you get someone who really wants to spend the time, you can do something with them. I think that's why they've hung around, and these characters continue to pop up in the DCU through today.
One of the things you don't hear them compared very often, but that's a lot of what Rom is. Rom shows up and he can see the dire race and other people can't, and so when he goes and zaps them, it's a logical conclusion. Some heroes go after him, the army. Eventually some of the heroes figure it out or whatever. Much in this universe, when Youngblood and Wildcats face off with the Lapadan whale hanging in the balance. The miniseries, right?
Right.
But that is a great concept, and you don't hear this, but as much X-Men inspiration as there's a lot of Rom and Wildcats as well.
Yeah, but for Killer Instinct in particular, this is a dense book. You get your money's worth. There's no decompression here, man. You turn the page. You got two guys at the height of their career. Everyone's fighting. There's villains. There's zombie robots. There's Kaizen Gamora. There's all the Cyberforce subplots. Plane crashes, things explode in ballistic 4-page spreads. You get your money's worth. They knew they got you, right? And they want to keep you. And they are just both barrels. There is no slow period. Dude. There is no nothing. There's not a lot of plot, but that doesn't mean stuff doesn't happen. I mean, the character work here is great. And it's a beautiful representation of the time. So again, it takes you back to this era and it explains to you this is why certain things happen. This is why certain concepts got really popular, because this is entertaining, man. This is just really, really entertaining.
Y'all ever listen to Abbey Road by the Beatles?
Been a while. I'm not a Beatles fan.
Well, no, because they don't sing about super twist blood guts or whatever it is you listen to. Oh my God, it's hairy hemorrhoid and the rectal bleeding. No, it's not them. It's the Beatles. Sorry, I love it. As long as I told you the other day, and make sure we're always laughing. I'm always laughing with you, not at you. But Abbey Road, toward the end of it, there is a song appropriately named "The End," and the Beatles, the three Beatles that play guitar, George, John, and Paul, kind of dual guitars. They do their own thing. I felt a lot of that here.
Okay.
Jim Lee and Mark Sylvester both trying to, in a good way, outdo the other. There was a healthy, I'm pushing this balls to the wall, and then this person like, well, I got to do the same. Well, they did this. I'm up in the ante even.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't know if y'all kind of felt that, too.
Yeah, they made each other better. I mean, again, they're sitting next to each other. They both quit Marvel. They both quit the X-Men books. They both can hear Todd and Rob fighting in the other room about who's a Bronco or whatever. They know that they got to turn it up to 11.
What is Rob? You're Rob.
Yeah, I mean the nothing gets scaled down. There's not a quiet final issue. It's like you did that. Oh, I'm going to introduce this. I'm going to keep going, and it's beautiful because it's art. I hate to say it that way, but it really is. It's just this raw. We know the next issue is coming out. It's going to have a foil cover. We're doing this crossover. We're going in this other direction. We're trying to make action figures. It's super fast and it's super dense. And these guys don't realize how successful they're going to be, so they have no reason not to do this. And they're just throwing everything at each other, and it's wonderful to watch. I was confused at first because I had actually forgotten about Homage Studios or whatever, and Dean had to remind me. It's like, no, this is what becomes Wildstorm, and I was like, oh, Celestia doesn't even have Top Cow yet.
In theory, they're still at Homage together. I don't know how much they literally work side by side, but they had to have still some.
Yeah.
And I mean, and you had other guys coming in there at this point too. You read the early Wildstorm, late Homage Studios guys, with J. Scott Campbell coming in, and he's like, yeah, man, I slept on somebody's couch and ate Pop-Tarts and just drew from wake up at 11 in the morning and be drawn by 12:30 and I'd draw until 4. And I was, goddamn, if I had any talent, I'd have done the same thing. Instead, here I am talking about people who have talent. Jesse, speaking of, Jesse, go ahead.
Well, you guys have brought up some great points about how these books just set themselves apart from what else was out there at the time. I wasn't seeing stuff like this. I definitely wasn't seeing stuff like this in the big two, as far as the bloodletting, as far as just the comic book format in itself. You guys mentioned these, you showed the 4-page gatefold thing, and that was just amazing.
Yeah, because I have the complete Cyberforce Volume 1, and it's presented that way, where they still fold out the whole way. So I read it digitally, too. I have it digitally as well. But when you fold the page out with Zealot and Grifter, Ninja Matrix body slicing through the air, Zappadoodle and 100 robots, they're There's an energy here that just is really, really hard to replicate that you don't see very often. Like you said, you're like there was nothing else at the time. But oddly enough, there were lots of things like it at the time. Just like we go back to the Beatles. As soon as the Beatles hit, there's 100 Beatles knockoff bands. Even bands like Jerry and the Pacemakers, who were the Dave Clark Five, who the Beatles knew, who they worked with. All of a sudden, they're getting deals. There's only one Beatle.
Right.
Even if other stuff looked kind of like this and acted kind of like this, did similar things, there's only one Jim Lee in his prime. There's only one Mark Silvestri in his prime. And you can have other guys who do similar stuff, and you can, you can plot some similar things and make some similar looking characters, but ain't nobody gonna confuse, Night Watch for Spawn.
Right, dude. Right.
I mean, ain't nobody going to do that. You can do these things. You can draw. Dagger Comics can come up with Team Anarchy, and I can see where they're influenced by Image, but bro, you ain't Mark Silvestri. And I don't want to badmouth them because they publish books. God bless them. And I mean that.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
they had a dream, they got it done, but you can see other people trying to capture this and they can't. And I think part of it, Darry mentioned this, it's editorial decisions. The big two, think about this, your Marvel or DC, how hard is it to be like 4-page spread? We're going to fold them out. We're going to do this both sides, going to add up everything right in here. Well, it's probably not impossible. Certainly you have the means, the wherewithal, the influence, etc. But you have all of this bureaucracy to get through.
You do.
Jim Lee can be like, I'm just doing this, and Jim Lee is running the show, so this is how it's going to, Jim Lee decides that's how it is, that's how it is. If there's waffles for dinner, it's waffles for dinner. That's how it is. I'm Jim Lee.
This is a 6-issue story. However, we get 2 prologues at the beginning, and then it's a 4-issue arc.
And they're genuinely prologues too. Like if you don't read them, you get caught up. It's better if you do. But if you didn't read them, I don't know why you wouldn't have, unless they sold out. These things are hot. I mean, you didn't have to. And I appreciate that about them. I think that's cool. Too often at this time, you would hear stuff where it's like, here's the Daredevil Fall from Grace prologue. But if you didn't read it, you're lost as hell. Well, it ain't a prologue, is it? Prologue of a book, I can skip and just get right to the book.
What I like about this story, and then we'll get into talking about some of the characters here in a second, but this story said 2 prologues. The way that it was set up, prologue number 1 is happening in Cyberforce number 1. Okay, makes sense. This is the first issue of the ongoing series. Holy shit, let's open things up with a crossover with Wildcats. All right, I'm down. Okay, but what's kind of interesting about this, Jim Lee kind of goes on at the beginning, I think, of his prologue part where, hey, this is issue 5. I decided I didn't want to do an issue 1 because now wouldn't it have been something else? And I wonder if the guys talked about this prior to, like, hey, let's do both of our ongoings and start it off with a crossover at issue number 1. And then Jim Lee's like, I'll just go with issue 5. I'm just going to continue.
I can't say for sure. I do feel like it would have gotten a lot more hype if they had both started with number 1s. I think that's almost undeniable. But I wonder if at some point, and this is conjecture, if it's wrong, correct me if somebody knows, if number 5 had already been solicited.
True.
If you had already kind of put that out there, you want to go forward. That's not what he says in his introduction, so I'm not saying that he's lying or anything, but maybe that was something that was part of it, or maybe it's just as simple as he says, I just felt I want to start over. But there's a lot of money involved when it comes, back in the day, I don't think so much more now, but back in the day when it came to shipping things, especially to newsstands, and these books were still on the newsstand, there was a lot, you paid more to start at number 1. So it could have been a money decision like that, or it could just be as simple as he felt like doing number 5, which is what he more or less says.
Yeah, he pretty much says, well, I'd just rather go. It seems to continue the story. Might as well just continue the story. And this is another.
If I was in charge, I would have been a new number 1 because we're going to sell 20% more copies, and we're already going to sell 500,000 copies. Let's sell another freaking 100,000.
And
are you shaking your head at me, Darry?
I just can't believe that there was a period of time we were reading where a book could sell 500,000 copies.
Right.
It's the truth, man.
Just because it came out. I mean, I know the Star Wars sold a bunch a few years back, but they goosed it. There's 37 covers or whatever, but it's only one Cyberforce number 1, and it sold mid-6 figures.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
What?
Jesse only bought a third of them.
Right back here.
I'm saving them for my kids' college education. I'll make $1 trillion.
Cash them in soon, believe it or not. Yeah, yeah, and it's another thing. It's also another indication of these guys are their own bosses. They can do whatever they want. That's the beauty of this whole endeavor right here. So, okay.
It's also the pain of it why they had to bring in somebody like Larry.
Okay,
because
true.
they were also poaching each other's talent and doing things that were untoward towards each other. Because it's Images is really more a sports league than a comic book company. If you think about Major League Baseball, it has 30 different owners, and they all have their own interests, but they all also kind of work together, and they have to be careful not to overstep these boundaries that they have, both real and just unwritten. And that was the thing. The Image guys, you're right, it was great. They could do whatever they wanted. Conversely, watch out, you can do whatever you want. That doesn't mean there'll be no repercussion.
Right. All right, we're going to start with characters here. Darry, you're going to be up first, buddy.
Very excited.
All right, I'm going to share my screen, and right here,
wow,
we have the WildC.A.T.s issue number 5, and we're just going to go left to right. All right, and I can zoom in if you need me. I'm sure you're very familiar. So let's start with Maul. Jeremy, I don't know his last name. I can't remember his last name, but it's Jeremy. I know that much.
Maul, Dr. Jeremy Stone,
Yes.
The team's Hulk, the team's Colossus, if you will.
Tusk.
Yeah, even better. The bigger he gets, the dumber he gets. And that's played for nice visual effect during the course of this crossover. Doesn't have too much going on for him outside of that, but I like it. I like the design. I like the purple face. I like the tusks at the back. I always thought he was a good way of taking the Hulk design and tweaking it just enough to make it interesting on its own.
What's his doctorate in?
That is a very good question. I don't know. I feel all these characters have the same generic mad science, Nikola Tesla nonsense degree, right?
Right. Biotechnical chemical engineering. You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right,
Whatever sounds like we could reasonably get away with it. And then when you got a bunch of them on one team, suddenly, oh, I'm just a specialist in this, or I'm just a specialist in this, or whatever. But no, I think Jeremy can do whatever the plot asks of him.
My only real issue with Maul, I love it, but the M on his head is it doesn't fit the vibe of the rest of the WildC.A.T.s.
Okay, yeah, if you're going with vibe, I'll get
I mean, listen, I don't think it looks bad. I just think that we're a covert action team. Who are those guys? I don't know. One of them had an M on his head. Let's start with that investigation. You know what I mean?
I feel like that's consistent with all of them, right? All of these G1 costumes for this team, they're all overdone. They've all got
for sure.
A little bit too much detail because, again, I just feel Jim Lee was like, what's going to look good on an action figure, right? That's not a bad way of designing something. And I feel like Maul, it was I gotta put something to break up the head. He can't just be green. I'm going to give him a cap type thing. Let's go with an M. I mean, it's not iconic in any way, but at least it breaks up his big, stupid forehead, you know?
It does break up his big stupid forehead, and I mean, to me, he looks a lot like Tusk. It's just a redone one, I've heard some people talk about that, and they badmouth it for whatever reason, but I don't care. Jim Lee co-created Tusk if he wants to. So I always go back to John Fogerty getting sued for plagiarizing himself.
Right.
Well, he did it originally. He can't really rip himself off. He decided to do it again. John Fogerty, in a court of law, the courts can be like, you can't plagiarize yourself. You can't be mad when these guys reuse designs they came up with somewhere else. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, with the WildC.A.T.s, I was going back to the same thing. It's this entire industry is a bunch of people copying a bunch of other people. That goes back to Superman is Gladiator and Batman is the Shadow and everything else. I'm not knocking that. You can copy all you want, but if you don't have something good when you copy, it's going to be ignored and it's going to be lost. To your point earlier, Dean, it's like there were a lot of people who were trying to knock off the X-Men, but the guys who actually did the X-Men did a knockoff and it did pretty well. So with Maul might be Tusk, he might be Colossus, he might be something else, but he survived longer than a lot of the other guys. And
he's cool.
Yeah.
You're right. He looks good as an action figure. I've seen it, and he's fun. And when you and the other thing is they wind up on goddamn TV. So you put him on a Saturday morning cartoon. This is a fun guy for the kids to relate to, especially the younger kids. Like, oh, he's big and dumb. Cool.
It's funny too. I shouldn't say dumb because that's very limiting. It's more the Guardians of the Galaxy movies did this really well with however you would characterize the Drax character. He's not dumb as in he's stupid or ignorant in any way. but he's a simpler character and he can take a very specific type of direction, and his character is written that way. That's what Maul is when he's empowered. But the joke of Maul is that when he shrinks back down and when he turns back into Bruce Banner, that guy can manipulate the alien technology and figure out what's going on and do all of this other stuff. But he doesn't like being that guy. He wants to be Maul, who's invincible and who can punch a mountain and this other stuff. But Maul cannot do the quadratic equation. Or
just be 9 feet tall, bro. Just kind of do both, right? Just beast it.
Find a happy medium.
He's got them big feet, and he'd be doing that super strength kicking, but then he's also, this is the formula that'll cure the legacy virus. Just do both. Don't pick.
It's cool. Maul's got two great stories that I can think of. One is the origin of superpower in the WildC.A.T.s is that everyone is descended from an alien that got stuck here. And at the beginning, it just seems to be two races of aliens. And I think it's Alan Moore who decides, no, what if anyone's got a specific physical characteristic, that's its own genre of alien. And you find out later on that Maul's people, the big purple ones, they were the native species. And the other aliens, the pretty humanoid aliens, actually colonized them. And you find out that their homeworld, they're the second-class citizen, and Maul's ancestors worked in the engine room of the ship. And they do a lot with that. And then the other thing is, I think it's Joe Casey, who we mentioned already, later on decides, well, if Maul gets simpler as he grows, maybe he gets more complex as he shrinks. So they do a storyline where Jeremy goes down into almost like a regressed fetal position, and he becomes so smart that, again, he tries to start solving all the world's problems. So,
that's great.
Yeah. They try to break it up. They try to say, like, hey, we're not writing the Hulk, but what would we do if we were writing the Hulk and we didn't have an editor? So,
smart baby. That's the smartest baby this side of Baby Commando on the Captain Commando arcade game.
There you go. There you go.
What were you saying, Justin?
I was just going to tell Darry, work your way right, man. Keep going.
Yeah. So next we got Warblade. Warblade is Reno Bryce. He is, or he will soon be, an artist. I'm not 100% sure what that means, but I know he's got a ponytail of green hair. So
there's a lot of ponytails in this, and for all the slicing and dicing, we got a lot of swords and a lot of knife fingers. How nobody's ponytail get chopped off?
Hair stays intact.
Just fine. I would have done that right off. I'd have been like, listen up, I mean business. And I'd have sliced Ripclaw's ponytail right off.
That's true. I never actually realized that he had any connection to Cyberdata until I read this. So I thought that was pretty cool because I never really knew his origin. And now it makes sense because in a couple of years, they're not going to be able to refer to Cyberforce or Cyberdata. So I'm sure they plugged that with something else.
Remember when we read Cyberforce Zero? He's in it.
He is. Oh, okay.
And you remember we were, ooh.
Yeah, they don't make a big deal of it.
No, it's not a big deal made of it. I think Misery's there too.
Yeah.
But just for a panel or two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that early image shared universe was great. I mean, you guys were the ones who pointed out to me too that Super Patriot was from Cyberdata. Everyone was, oh, you got a company that just makes superhuman cyborgs? That's great because I got a bunch of superhuman cyborgs. I don't want to have to waste space giving them origins. They're all from Cyberdata, baby.
All from Cyberdata. Just give them numbers after that. It's a CD97 unit.
And then you can see the way that this is laid out. So up front, we've got Zealot and we've got Grifter, our two breakout characters. Zealot is Wonder Woman if Wonder Woman were hyper-violent. She founded and she runs, or she ran before this book opens, the Coda, which are the Amazons crossed with the Hand. I think it's the best way to describe them. And centuries later, she's...
The Hand-is-on.
The Hand-is-ons, yeah, exactly. She's trying to take him out because she feels bad because they turned her to a terrorist group. And,
it happens.
Yeah, what did you land on Earth? You're like, oh, these people look like us. I'm going to give them ways to kill each other that they couldn't have even imagined before. Then what's the worst that could happen? And then you cut to 1,000 years in the future, and she's desperately trying to kill all her former students, which I love. She is immortal. She's the best fighter on the planet. She's the embodiment of death. You cannot beat her in a one-on-one fight. It's as simple as that. Grifter is her boyfriend, but she treats him more like a pet because he is like 25 in this or something. Oh no, excuse me. His origin is still tied to Vietnam at this point, so I guess he's 40. I don't know. He's got
to be up there. I mean, because we're not too far. I mean, I know in a couple of years we're going to be talking Bad Rock and Grifter, and he's hanging out with Bad Rock's mom, which I'm sure is probably pushing the high 30s at least. But continue, sir. So sorry.
No, it's weird because if you look on paper, he's a Frank Castle type. He's way older than he appears to be, but he's constantly drawn as this really young guy. So I think eventually they try to explain it. They try to do a little
the old infinity formula.
The old infinity formula. He's always going to look as young as the story needs, but he's going to complain about the Nixon administration. I don't know, whatever it calls for. But
there's a lot to complain about.
I'm saying. He's got his laser guns. He's got his mask that makes no sense that I love. Yeah. And he smokes a lot. Just, wow, damn, man. He
does smoke a lot. And I understand. I smoke a lot of weed. I'm like the Sublime song. I smoke 2 joints in time of peace, smoke 2 joints in time of war, smoke 2 joints before I smoke 2 joints, and then I smoke 2 more. You know what I'm saying? And this guy smokes cigarettes the way I smoke weed. Bro, you not only are you 49, but you're smoking cigarettes. Your real age has to be 74.
I didn't realize that Grifter had any powers. And then when I was reading this, he's definitely got some type of superhuman ability, right?
He has a lot of them, actually. I thought the same thing. I didn't know superpower. He's got healing factor, and he has some super strength, and he apparently has reactionary psionic abilities. He can't telekinesis on purpose, but but he can out of nowhere. That's why when Misery tries to tap into his head, he can resist, because apparently he has reactive psionic abilities. Running around, double jump, kick flipping, super ninja zapping, just doing whatever he wants. He has a motorcycle that looks like a future Razor. I love him, but I also am all right.
The problem with
he's like Cool Whip. I love Cool Whip. It's delicious. Okay, can you imagine eating 2 bowls of Cool Whip? Gross. He would just so much. He's just there's a lot there, right? But his dedication to smoking is impressive. Every time they do a jump kick at one point, double flip, land on the jet that's falling, and he's out cigarette time. Yeah. What? Way to go, bro. And he should, because in the near future, it will be that will be a no smoking zone. There will be a sign on this falling jet. There'll be no smoking. So he had to get the cigarettes in where he could. I respect it.
Oh, shit.
Boyd probably told him about that. Boyd probably came Grifter of the future, you can't smoke in restaurants.
He's got to get him in.
Right. He started lighting 6 cigarettes at the same time.
Yeah, Grifter's interesting because there's a version of the character that exists during Vietnam called Deadeye, and he's part of this team that gets experimented on, and they all get nonsense thrown in them, and all of the characters end up being major parts of the Homage Wildstorm universe. But the problem with Grifter is that he clearly isn't that character when Wildcats starts. He's clearly younger. He clearly isn't intended to be some kind of red psychic assassin. So most of these powers just get ignored as time goes on, and he's just the best marksman on the planet, or real tough, or your generic superset. But yeah, here it's on full display, where Misery, who's this top shelf psychic, tries to go in, and his brain just stops her cold, and she's like, "Why can't I read you? You're blocking me. You should not be able to do that." He's like, "I don't know," and then he tries to shoot her in the face, which I love, because again, it's Grifter's a character that has a lot going on, but does not spend a lot of time thinking things through. That's not his plan. Which is a good foil for Zealot, because Zealot's talking about how she watched the Roman Empire crumble slowly over generations, and Grifter is off chasing a squirrel, which just that's their dynamic, and it's really good because he's not the Wolverine of the team in the sense that he's got the guy with the claws. They got their own guy with the claws, but he was definitely
the guy with the claws.
They have the guy with the claws, but Grifter has this shady past where he's killed a lot of people, and he's off having his own adventures, and he's got his own Nick Fury and Lynch and this whole thing. And it's interesting the way they split the character attributes. But I love Grifter, and I'll continue to support that character to today.
Well, I mean, his name is Grifter, so right off the top,
he's got the best real name of the entire Image universe. His real name is Cole Cash, which is perfect, because it both sounds like you created a parody character, but also if you told me that Peter Parker in the 60s had a classmate named Cole Cash, who I don't know, worked at the bank or something, I would believe you.
He definitely worked at the bank.
It is a perfect parody and a perfect representation of what it's parodying, and he's great.
Cole Cash in the Marvel Universe becomes Bankman.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your powers? Oh, compound interest. I'm crushing you with it. Bring Galactus back. I want that.
There you go. There you go.
Can I just
My
say about
credit's destroyed.
Warblade that he's really more, he has the slicey fingers, but he's Mr. Fantastic or the T-1000, right? He's always 20 feet away from somebody. He's like, Nick, and they're just, I just killed a bird 35 feet away from me. Or what the fuck ever.
It's very much, I've always thought that Warblade was clearly inspired by the T-1000.
Yeah,
it really, that rang true to me, right?
But also, he's got that Carnage feel to him, right? He's always drawn with these giant claws. His arms will stretch. Like, there's visual...
Yeah, that's what I mean by Mr. Fantastic. He stretches a lot.
Oh, there's definitely
you're right.
Mr.
It is more
Fantastic
Carnage-y. It is
there's that visual language, right? When I was first reading this stuff, I didn't necessarily know. I knew Warblade was a new character. I didn't necessarily know a lot about him. But you look at his powers, like, oh, you can do the Carnage thing. I love Carnage. I'm gonna try this out. I'm gonna watch that. Oh yeah, all right. T-1000. Oh, he's made of liquid metal. Oh, this is good. This is gonna be cool. Again, it's giving you more, right? You're gonna have the action figure in your hand. What are you gonna know about this guy? They're supposed to be a covert action team. Fine, whatever. Well, that's nonsense. What's the coolest set of stuff I can give you so you love this character? And they all come super packed, and Warblade's no exception. He's got all the cool visuals to make a cover dynamic or a bunch of trading cards dynamic. It just really.
Oh yes.
Yeah. You were like, oh man, I'm into Carnage. Look at that guy. Oh man, he's got a big old ponytail on top of his head. I got a big old ponytail on top of my head. Mine's 4 feet long too. I should buy this comic book. Two things I love: Carnage and ponytails.
I'll never understand the ponytail, long-haired thing that they did on guys back then. I don't care.
There wasn't even Ariana Grande back then to have inspired them to do this. Where did this come from?
It's true. I blame the super mullet. I really do. I blame Dan Jurgens.
Maybe so. Everybody here has there's three hair on the Wildcats. There's the big old ponytail. There's the 90s guy, cool preppy. And Voodoo has stripper hair. And that's it. Those are the three hairstyles we have on the team.
Yeah. So just rounding this out, Spartan is...
Hell yeah, Spartan rule.
Spartan is there. He takes up space. He's the Cyclops. He's the Leonardo. He's a robot, and he constantly reminds you of that. And he's the team leader, and he has one of the most complicated backstories of all time, so I'm just going to ignore it. Okay. If anyone asks, he is a robot.
He's a robot guy, yeah. Later, he'll lead Stormwatch, and those are some good issues of Stormwatch, to be honest. Man. That's why I like Spartan, because my big exposure to him is in Stormwatch, and he's good. Yeah. He's really good at Stormwatch.
Jumping in here right now, because there is an ad for Stormwatch 25, the images of tomorrow.
Yeah. And and Spartan's in Stormwatch. Fuck you, I know.
That's me. You just imitated me. When I picked up that issue and saw that, I'm like,
what is going to be happening in 2 years?
And the beautiful thing is that Stormwatch followed through. Some of these other issues, these other titles that were doing this, I couldn't hang on to watch them do this because it seemed like they were.
I think a couple made it. I don't think Brigade.
I don't think
made it.
No. And Stormwatch did a fantastic job of getting us there, I think.
Yeah. I do too. I read this a couple years back and it was good. So that's the thing. I think that's my thing with Spartan. Why I take up for him in Wildcats. Yeah, he comes across a little weirder, a little more basic. But in Stormwatch, he's a badass. He does cool shit.
Right.
And also, I just think he looks cool. That's the number one thing. He just looks cool.
Well, you said he was the quintessential hero. I think I remember that.
Hero, like I'm just saying, he is the quintessential '90s hero. You look at him at this point in the early '90s. This is, if you looked at him, you can just see so many other heroes that were they didn't branch off of this look necessarily. Some of them were existed prior, but you can see him as the apotheosis of all of these looks and inspirations of this time. And he wears a mask even though he's a robot, which Darry doesn't like, but I think it's funny.
Head sock.
I do, because I think it's a great design.
It's a great design, right? That's what I say when he's the quintessential hero. Yeah. I mean, there's so many heroes. You could look at him and see pieces of different guys there around this time.
No, it's a good design, and he does what he's supposed to do. He yells at Grifter, "Why are you going off? Why aren't you listening to me?" And then he can get blown up, and he can come back, but he can also plug his eye into, I don't know, the computer terminal or something.
And he loves voodoo.
Yes, he does.
As a segue, he's got this relationship with Voodoo, the newest member of the team, the point of view character, the former exotic dancer, Priscilla Catan, who has the ability to see the Daemonites for what they really are. And push them out of the body. And yeah, she is dating a giant walking robot man, which I love because again, it's like he's doing the Data thing from Star Trek of how human am I? What can I do? Where's the line? Am I a person or a bunch of code you dumped into a thing? And she's like, well, I'm really into magic, so that kind of explains everything anyway. And they have this great relationship that goes on and off again pretty much until the book ends. So I'm a fan of them. I think they're a good dynamic, and I love again that she's just this wild person who's constantly seeing demons and devils and crazy people and little old ladies, and he's like, I will be your robot protector, and she's like, don't need you to protect me, but you might need to murder a bunch of people in 30 seconds. So.
I think that, and I don't know if this was consciously thought of or not, but leaders, with the exception of maybe Captain America, because you just love him so much, we always kind of badmouth him as sourpuss guys, Leonardo or Superman in Justice League or whatever. But you made this guy the robot, so he's just cool. Now he's just cool. And if it gives an excuse, oh, well, if he plays by the book, of course he does. He's a robot. He has to. Instead of you being like, why won't you let Wolverine do cool things, Cyclops?
It's funny, too, because I always go back to the early days of Stan and Jack of Cap and Hawkeye, right? That's where this starts, right? Captain America is the stern-faced leader, and he's talking about how I gotta get my troops home. We gotta beat the bad guy. We gotta save people. We gotta keep the risk of innocence to an absolute minimum. And Hawkeye's like, I could do that. I could absolutely do that. You don't worry about it. I am going to do that. And Captain America is doing his best to make sure that this guy doesn't get anyone killed because he's constantly trying to showboat. And obviously they were able to balance that really well. But you can apply that relationship to 100 different places, whether it's the Ninja Turtles or here or whatever else. You got the one guy who goes rogue and the one guy who's trying to get everyone home. But to your point, you got to remember to make the guy who represents the establishment likable. And so people forget to do that.
And I think the robot was a shortcut to do that. And I mean that in a good way.
Yeah. I mean, listen, no one can write Cyclops like Chris Claremont. He could make a three-dimensional, well-rounded character who could lead the team. Everyone else is just like, nah, he's just the boring guy, well, whatever else. It's you got to give everyone that third dimension or else you're just going to have a flat character. So
yeah. Now, you've got two more you can talk about real quick that aren't pictured here.
I was going to say we're missing two more members who only have cameos in this story, but they're worth mentioning. One is Void. Lord, I do not remember her real name. It is long and it is Russian, and I never know how to pronounce it correctly, but she is a cosmonaut who touched the face of God, and now she can act as their living transport system. And she can teleport anyone, anywhere, through any time. But she's also kind of loopy. She's one of these characters who's, I think Dean mentioned this, she sees more than she's supposed to through time, through space, through everything else. Sometimes she'll just randomly pop out and reappear a couple issues later and be like, oh, hey, I'm ready to take you guys to face the next threat. But she's an interesting character because regardless of the fact that they have a ship that Jim Lee was clearly hoping would be a good a playset accessory. She can just take them anywhere. She predates the Authority with the ability to just go anywhere through doors. So that always helped with their adventures. And then the final member of the team is the Lord Emp, the little person. I'm not sure what the proper term is, but he is, unlike most of the characters here, he and Zealot and Mr. Majestic were all born on the alien world that these guys come from. And he's been living on Earth for hundreds of years, thousands of years, and he's always a weird socialite, right? So during the 40s, he's a big business guy and he wants to help beat the Nazis. Back in ancient Greece, he's a owner of a whole community and he does his best to get democracy out there, but he's also got, hordes of servants and women and all this other stuff. And since this is 1993, he is now the CEO of a Fortune 500 company that doesn't make anything on the surface, but allows him to continue using his alien technology and everything else. He does not have any real superpowers. Later on he'll get an arc or whatever, but he's just
smokes a lot of cigars.
Smokes a lot of cigars. Yeah, he's got that classic Jack Kirby. He's always got a cigar buried in his teeth.
I respect it.
Not quite the Professor X, but throughout Killer Instinct, Grifter's always complaining about having to deal with old Jaco or Jake. And that's Jacob Marlowe. That's the name.
No beer on the ship.
No beer on our ship. The Merv, kids. The Merv. Not the Blackbird. The Merv.
The Merv.
All right, Dean. You're up, buddy. Here we go.
All right.
Make me proud. We have
I cannot make you proud for this. More than me. All right, man. So the guy in the back is the big bruiser Impact. Man, he sure is big. That's his power, being big and strong. Dude. He's a burn victim of some kind, I forget, and then he has to wear this armor way more than he'd care to. That's what I remember about him. Ripclaw is First Nations Native American. His real name's Robert Bearclaw.
Yes, sir.
And he's always jumping off stuff. That's a big thing for him. He's also rocking the ponytail. Just he didn't want to be left out. And mostly what he does is slice stuff up with his razor fingers that can apparently be any length at any time. And he spends most of his time trying not to scratch any itch he has, right? That's a big thing. You can't do that. But he's pretty cool. He's very Wolverine-y, very I'm in touch with the earth and all this stuff. And then you have the mutant striker. He got them armed.
He does.
3 arms on one side. Guns, guns, guns. Guns, guns, guns. And then guns.
Able to shoot helicopters out of the sky.
Anybody can. You just got to be lucky. He had 3 chances to get lucky. He had three arms on that side.
That's true. That's true.
Then we have Psyblade, who is Psylocke, as near as I can tell. She does a lot of ninja kicking. And she has a psionic blade that she pulls out, and just like Psylocke psychic knife. And I don't remember most of these people's real names. I'm sorry. They also, in one of the letters pages, this guy asked, Psyblade's metal armor is skin tight. How does she get it off? With a cannon opener? And they responded, wouldn't you like to know? So anyhow, later on,
juice, guys. You got to drink that flea juice.
Yeah, so drink the flea juice. So later on, we'll have, or even before this, we'll have some swimsuit specials with her. So that's
good. Yes, we will.
Velocity, who will also make her way into some swimsuit specials. She's young and fast, and they found her during the miniseries. They rescued her from Cyberdata. And then in the front is Mr. Cyclops himself, Heatwave. Although he has Havoc's power, he has a cyber head, and he shoots super plasma blasts, I believe. And he can fly. And he is supposed to be the leader of the team, but it feels to me like Stryker is the leader of the team.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I haven't read enough Cyberforce to say. I've liked all that I've read, but those are the guys I would recognize them and know their names anytime. Ballistic isn't here. I don't think she's quite joined yet. No. I think she's right Predator face turn. She's just a cyborg with big guns, as far as I know, with an eye that glows. And then back at the place, don't they have Timmy and Chip?
I don't know if, I think you're right. I don't know if Chip is in this one or not. I can't remember. I know. Okay, we have the doctor. There's a doctor that's back at the lab along with, I'm pretty sure Timmy's there too.
Hell yeah.
But, yeah, they're kind of our human helpers here. Well, no, I shouldn't say that, because isn't Timmy an advanced life form of some sort?
Yeah. He's like a life model decoy.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, we've got the teams out there, folks. You now know about what we're going to get into. WildC.A.T.s.
Well, let me throw this in real quick, too.
Do it.
So when I was looking up what the press was doing for this bad boy.
Oh, yeah. Let's hear about what's going on.
Okay. I could go into all of it, but one of the things I wanted to say was we're talking about team members. I forget the Hero Illustrated number. I didn't write it down, but it was in Wizard number 27. They put the exact same press release out in their little, remember they used to have the news section where it would just be a little 4 paragraphs about this and 4 paragraphs about that, usually about slightly smaller deals, but you get a little, like this in there. Well, they mentioned there were. I didn't write it down word for word, but they say that it involved the crossover is going to involve Ripclaw. It's going to center around Ripclaw, Warblade, and new Cyberforce member Misery. Did y'all get the feeling that Misery was a member at all? Or is this just? I know she mind Zappadoodled them, but she wasn't a member. It didn't feel that way to me. With the Zappadoodle, they were doing her. She convinced him to do her a solid, not that she joined a team.
About the only time you get anything close to that was, I think, the second to last issue, maybe, or maybe it was at the beginning of the last issue where. Well, no, I think it's the second to last issue where they swoop in and they rescue Ripclaw and they take Misery onto the ship, and she's kind of hanging out with them, and that's where she, just like you said, she's kind of putting the psychic
the old whammy on him.
Right. So yeah. As far as that goes, no, I did not expect her to be a new member of the team. Which again, maybe that went away with the costume change.
But yeah, it was the exact same press release, word for word.
Huh. Interesting.
So that's how I know it was a press release, because there's no other reason for it to be just word for word. In Wizard 28 and 29, they used to do a thing called picks for the month. WildC.A.T.s 6 and 7 are picks, but the Cyberforce issues aren't, which is very interesting to me. And then the Hero Illustrated Who's Who special, Who's Who in comic books, Ripclaw gets a profile, and they mentioned at one point that Misery was his only weakness, but now she's gone. There were also a few at the end of in the price guide. I showed y'all they put one-liners about a comic book. Hey, if you missed it, there was a one line about Cyberforce #1 or whatever, but not nearly as much press as you'd think for Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri.
Right.
Two Image founders having a big crossover with two of the hottest teams of the last year. There was the Silvestri. There were some Jim Lee and Silvestri interviews around this time, but it's just barely mentioned. It's not even worth me saying what they said because it would just be like, oh, there's a crossover coming up, and it wouldn't even be quoted. It would just be part of the article. So yeah, not a lot out there on this from what I could see. Nothing in comic scene. Nothing in what was I looking for? I couldn't find anything in Comic Buyer's Guide. So we'll see. I mean, and there are some other stuff I can't check. I don't have access to Comics Values Monthly or Comic Book Collector or Fan, so I don't have those. So there might be something I missed, but in my resources, not a lot of stuff, honestly, for something that, based on the amount of house ads, based on the amount of ads I saw in Hero, Wizard, and in Image Comics, you thought it was a big deal.
Right, dude. And this is a little bit more than 1 year into Image's history, along with, I'm trying to think of
there's a lot of things in the letters pages about apologizing for delays, or people saying, I'll wait forever for the books, Mark. These are the greatest comic books anybody's ever done. I'll wait forever. And then they'll respond, hey, we're trying to get under control. Maybe the rose was a little off the bloom because of that. That's pure conjecture.
Okay.
But I don't want to cover this a lot. When's it going to come out? Or maybe they announced it like 8 months before it actually came out or something.
That's true. All right, guys, I'm going to lay it out here for you. We've got 6 issues. This is going to be a real quick synopsis covering the whole thing, but we can get into details, whatever you guys want to talk about. But just to kind of lay it out there, Cyberforce 1 through 3 was a part of this, and WildC.A.T.s #5 and 6 and #7 were the other 3 issues that make up this. And again, this is focusing on Warblade and Ripclaw, two people that have had a history that are on each of these teams.
Two people who don't mind pointing the finger.
No, they do not. Right at each other and possibly through each other as well.
They have friends who don't mind to point the gun.
At each other. Here we go. In the early days of the Image universe, 2 powerful teams found themselves on a collision course that would shake the very foundations of their respective worlds. The WildC.A.T.s, a covert team of superhumans led by Spartan, featuring the enigmatic Grifter, were tasked with a mission to uncover the secrets of the elusive, I'm going to call this Busy. How's that? Because there's
That's how I pronounced it. I thought that they were called Busies.
Yeah, and there's I think they were working for Busybody at one point, which
I was calling them Bisleys after Simon Bisley.
I did for a little bit, and then I realized there was no L, and I was like, you should have just called them Bisleys.
I knew there was no L.
If there's any complaint to an extent, maybe they try and make things too technical, sometimes too precise, too real world. Just call them Bisleys and go on. Why are they called Bisleys? Because of Simon Bisley. Just go with it. Who cares? You're talking about wild ass stasis pod super arm robot things. Who cares?
Super arm. We're tasked with the mission to uncover the secrets of the elusive Busy technology.
Bisley.
Little did they know that their path would cross with that of Cyberforce, a group of cybernetically enhanced operatives hellbent on taking down their former masters at Cyberdata. The catalyst for this explosive clash was Misery, a cunning and manipulative psionic operative with a deep-rooted vendetta against, well, we'll just say Warblade. And she kind of uses Ripclaw to help further that vendetta.
She just does not like guys with pointy fingers, sharp pointy fingers, not top ponytails, or both. Maybe jumpers. That's the other thing she may not be into. I hate guys who jump off of things who have pointy claws and ponytails. These guys like looking at each other like just slinking, like doing the Homer Simpson back into the head.
But through her machinations, she pitted the 2 groups against each other, stoking the flames of mistrust and hatred with her psychic powers. As the battle raged across, this all takes place on Gamora.
A very cleverly named country.
Yes, indeed. From the war-torn nation of Gamora, allegiances were tested and long-buried secrets came to light. Warblade, the Wildcats' own formidable warrior, found himself torn between his newfound allies and a past he couldn't quite remember, while Ripclaw, Cyberforce's feral powerhouse, grappled with the truth about his connection to Misery and the child that they apparently shared. In a climactic showdown, the two teams clashed with unbridled fury, their powers and abilities unleashed in a spectacular display of superhuman might. But as the
Mostly zapping and bashing.
Yes, they did. But as the smoke cleared, a shocking revelation emerged. Misery was not who she seemed. Her true nature is that of a busy body, a busy android, a product of the very technology the Wildcats were there looking for, and had brought a sudden and unexpected end to the conflict. I think a lot of that is the fact that she got stabbed and she stopped messing with their heads. In the aftermath, the two teams parted ways, their understanding of each other forever altered, their respect for one another's abilities solidified. The Killer Instinct crossover event not only set the stage for possible future collaborations between the iconic teams, which I don't know. I'm sure they got to get together again sometime down the road, right? I can't remember. Deathmate. Oh, my.
Yeah, and even if they don't, there's a Strike Force Stormwatch crossover coming up.
Okay. All right.
I saw a house ad for it in one of these books, and I was Jesse stoked. We're going to have to do this one now. Here comes Tempest. Black Animal.
These future collaborations, possible future collaborations between these iconic teams, but also laid the groundwork for the larger tapestry of the Image universe, where alliances are forged, secrets are unearthed, and the lines between friend and foe are constantly blurred. There you go. That is a very large overview of what happens in Killer Instinct. We could get down into some of the specifics, though. It's up to you boys how you want to do this. But I could tell you that we covered a lot so far. Mainly, again, this was the crossover. But I think this was probably, I'm trying to think, this might have been the first crossover of the Image universe that I was really excited to get my hands on. Wanted to get a hold of it. And we've got two artists at the top of their game, just laying it all out there. We've already said this. So really, when we get into the specifics of the story, Ripclaw, shadowy past.
Shadowy past. They all have a shadowy past.
Same thing with Warblade.
Except for, I guess, Velocity, who seems to be, any shadows in her past were put upon her, not committed by her.
Well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, let me ask you here, Dean, what do you think of our villain first off, Misery?
All right. She's fine.
Okay.
Listen, I don't mean this in a bad way, but I love the movie Independence Day, but very little of it was because of the characters.
Aliens.
A lot of it, yeah. I don't mean that. It's just cool shit happened. A lot of cool shit happened. Do I think Misery was cool? Hell yeah. Could I tell you much about her? No, I don't know. Yeah. Turns out she was a robot. How about that? But I do like her. She's a good plot device to get two pointy finger guys to not like each other. And it's a great way to tie these two universes together. What I really liked was what's the guy's name? Dr. Richtenhofen?
Richtenhofen, yeah.
Yeah. I like that they're like, hey, this guy's in cyberdata, but he's really a daemonite. That's a great way to take tethers that are just out there and tie them together.
Sir.
Because, of course, that would make sense that one of these evil-ass daemonites would be part of another evil-ass company doing evil-ass things to get evil-ass money to take over the evil-ass world. So I really, really dug that. But Misery, no, you could tell she wasn't going to live through this story. She was here just for this story. And she does what she's supposed to do and looks good doing it. She's very good at sitting around and looking sexy while guys fight over her. And that's mostly what she was here to do. And she puts the old bamboozle, the old evil eye on Cyberforce. And that's what she's here to do. But I don't think she was a great villain, but I think she served the purpose. In a lot of ways, I don't know how she grows or doesn't grow in the Cyberforce universe, but in a lot of ways, she's Doomsday. Doomsday was there to kill Superman, and Superman was to kill him and serve the purpose and did a great job, but you don't really know a whole lot about it, and you don't really have a lot of time during that story to grow a lot of attachment or disdain for the character, of Doomsday. You mostly have disdain for her, and at the end, you find out there was a baby, so then you're like, wow, now I feel weird, and that's pretty much it.
I was really confused about that baby, by the way. Do we know who that is? The baby's a robot.
No, the baby is not.
Okay.
Yeah, Cyber Baby, the newest Cyberforce spinoff.
I know, we have no idea. It came out of nowhere, dude. I mean,
Okay. I thought I missed something. I was
I thought so too. That was the thing. I've read it several times, and yeah, it's like the very end. It's like, what about the baby? It's like, oh shit, a baby. Like, what the fuck? Did Tommy was sounding like this? Why is this just coming up now?
Yeah, they're really. It's kind of out of the blue. The only thing that
it changes your feeling. You're not sure what to feel at that point because you were like, hell yeah, glad you gutted that robot bitch, and then you're like, oh
shit.
I was kind of maybe I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Obviously what they're trying to do here is set up something for future issues and a little bit more to Ripclaw's past, make it a little more interesting and shady, I guess.
Murky.
Because as far
at least develop it some, because remember you see Killjoy in the miniseries and Ripclaw and her spagga, and then in the prologue here you get to kind of see them work together and see why they might have a snippy relationship at that point.
Mm-hmm.
All the shot guys, all the Cyberforce guys had like chip in them and had to be taken out.
Yeah, brain box.
Did Ripclaw take his own out?
Brain box, yeah.
Did Ripclaw reach up his nose with those big old claws and just rip his own freaking thing out? Total Recall style? Do you think that happened?
I don't know. It could possibly be. The big old
I don't know. I don't read a lot of
Cyberforce.
Cyberforce. That's my headcanon now for sure. Actually, in my headcanon, he puts it up to his ear and then he makes it grow and it grows through his head and the box is on the other side.
What were you going to say, Darry?
Oh, I just really the fact you mentioned Killjoy before. I love the idea that every team now has an earlier version that did covert ops. There were a bunch of shocks that hung out together and did awful, terrible things before Cyberforce became a thing. There was Team 7 that did awful, terrible things before WildC.A.T.s and Gen 13 became a thing. It's all this Team X
Wolverine
nonsense.
and the Weapon X project. This was like a very sexy thing at this point.
Yeah. And it makes sense because these characters aren't supposed to be noble for the sake of being noble. Most of them were terrible people who are trying to figure out how to be good people and if they want to be good people. So again, it's all consistent. It's that same stuff over and over again. I mean, even this crossover, it's obvious the two of them were sitting in a room and going, well, we both have characters that have claws who aren't Wolverine. What if there's a reason for that, right?
Right.
They came up with a red-headed woman for them to fight over. It's not Shakespeare, but
whose color scheme changes from the house side to the comic.
Oh yeah, you mentioned
her costume.
So what was going on? I don't off the top of my head.
They said in the letters page because they just felt like it.
Oh well, there you go.
Which is bad branding, but I don't think anybody really cared.
Well, it's bad branding, except if the guy drawing, if the guy doing all the design work feels like he came up with a better design, then who are we to fight with him, right?
Nobody was buying this because, oh man, did you see that house ad? Yeah. Did you see Misery's costume? Yeah. I'm going to buy these 6 issues because I love that costume. And they better not change a goddamn thing about it.
Not a single thing.
Like, all of a sudden they open it, like get the wolf eyes from a Tex Avery. What happened? I mean, so I don't think anybody really cared. It's just interesting.
Oh, man. I'm jumping back into one of the things that you said there just real quick on that, Dean, about
take out his own thing.
No. The fact that about you said Misery was a villain that you kind of thought she was going to die at the end of this. I can tell you I didn't. I mean, I'm not talking about right now the way that I was reading this back then.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, keep in mind, I never read this before we read it for this. So
you haven't, yeah.
I have. I'm reading this as a 45-year-old, not a 15-year-old. When I was 15, I could have gotten swerved. I don't know. I can still get swerved now. The only way to never be a mark is to never think you couldn't be a mark.
Very good.
You know,
yeah.
so
at the time with this being this image universe that is just coming together and things are starting to unfold right in front of you, I was like, okay, this is going to be a new villain that we're going to see occasionally going to show up. And
especially with her messing with 2 different teams. She has connections.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Universe, you're saying. So that's for, you go to the other things. Chapel killed Spawn. Neat little things. They put the Super Patriot was from Cyberdata. There were stuff on other sides of the universe that were tied together like this. So why not this? And if it was going to be tied together, you assume it's going to build something bigger.
True. Yeah. Very true.
I can see where you're coming from, Jesse. That makes sense. Okay. Me, as a wise 45-year-old.
There's definitely an argument to be made if things had gone differently and there was just an owner, right? If someone had just come in and said, man, I really like this stuff. I'm gonna buy the original 7 properties. Obviously that would have never happened. But if you had let that fictional universe go for 30 years, like what would it look like today? Would it look like the Marvel universe? Would it look like the DC universe? Or would it not be?
Would it even exist?
No, that's probably most likely. Yeah, and obviously
I mean, I'm not trying to say anything bad, but you look at all those other universes that started around the same time, none of them exist now.
Yeah, no, you're right. I agree with you. I just, the early days were so interesting that it's, I don't know, thought experiment, I guess.
I think it's...
But they could... It really just depends... If somebody came in and bought it and let these guys continue to be creatively in charge, maybe it would still exist, and it would be interesting to see what it evolved into. What were you saying, Jesse?
I was just going to say that is something that I think about very frequently, is what would this universe look like if we still had it together? I sit there and I watch episodes of Invincible, and I think about that shit because I'm fuck, man. Why am I not seeing some Stormwatch people show up here in the episode? Because, well, fuck, what happened to the Image universe? And it upsets me, but I understand. I don't know if it would have been as glamorous as I wanted it to be. That's the thing.
Well, I mean, it's super hard to say because the speculator boom pumped so much money into comic books that if somebody had bought Image for the thought experiment, let's say somebody buys Image in 1993, what do you think they pay? $50 million? $100 million? Valiant sold for 40, right?
Okay.
A lot of it was a stock deal, so Image has got to be worth at least that, arguably more. It's selling more comics, has a higher share. So if you come in and say you buy it for $80 million, let's just say for argument's sake, it's not going to be worth 15% of that in 2 years. And what does that mean for the person who bought it? If they just bought it to have it and wanted to keep running it, we probably do still have that going. But if they bought it to somehow make money, where's the money going to come from? Because they've lost a lot of money all of a sudden. I'll tell you, and maybe the money would be, well, I'm getting what I own Image, but I'm also going to invest in Todd's toys, and we're gonna get this stuff going in other directions in a unified way that couldn't exist for them because their properties couldn't overlap when they went. Say if you're like, oh, I want to do a Cyberforce cartoon. Cool, who's Warblade? You can't use him. So they might have been able to tap into other forms of revenue on a larger level than they were unable to as individuals if they could have done so if somebody's running the collective. So it's hard to say. Even with that big drop as far as revenue with comics, there were other avenues that were opening up at that point. Toy Biz was selling a lot of toys. Even as comic books went down, toy sales stayed healthy. Fox was looking for animation to add to their stuff. There was an animation war going on at the moment. It's really surprising that only WildC.A.T.s was able to make that jump. Maybe you Spawn was on HBO. Maybe you also get Shadowhawk on HBO, or maybe you get Shadowhawk on Showtime because you pit these things against the other in a way that Jim Valentino and Todd McFarlane couldn't do. I don't know, but that's something to keep in mind when you're doing this thought experiment, that no matter what, comic sales are going to go down. They just are. There are a lot of people buying comics that we're not going to read them and we're buying 6 or 7 copies. So they were going to leave no matter what. Could these guys get other revenue going? I would say so. I think this is something you could start around that time, really start selling and really start getting things going, especially if you had one person to do it. So it's an interesting thing to think about.
I'm really curious. Sorry. No, you're right. I'd be really curious also as to the fan perception of something like that happening, because that almost flies in the face of what Image was at the time. And
how do you keep that brand going when Sega became the #1 video game console, but they built that on a reputation of irreverency? Well, how do you continue to be the man? You are the man now.
Yep, you are the man.
Darry, it worked for Marvel. I mean, that was their whole thing, right?
It did. I'm not saying it's impossible. You're right. It did. It still works for Marvel to an extent. You still have these people who think that you hear the arguments over movies, which it's funny to hear people argue Marvel versus DC movies and echo shit that we probably argued about when we were 14 about comic books. And the answer is, guys, these are corporations and don't care about you. Don't argue about this too much. One, don't be, oh, Marvel's better than DC, and I swear allegiance to them. They do not care. If you like Marvel, fine. If you like DC, fine. But don't think for a second that either of them are going to lose 8 seconds of sleep if you decide to buy another comic or never buy another comic or watch another movie again. But it's very interesting to see these arguments now as far as that goes. As far as, oh, well, Marvel came from a rebellious attitude. This and that. Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, blah, blah, blah. DC fans were, well, we're more rebellious since then. Dark Knight Returns, Sandman took more chances. They both want to claim this maverick thing while being part of gigantic mass media monoliths. It's interesting. But you're right. Marvel made a lot of money off convincing you that you were a maverick because you and 200,000 other people bought Daredevil in 1982.
Yeah, too true. Too true.
Darry, did you have any thoughts about Misery before I move on here?
Call her Misery.
Misery was rough because I liked her design. And again, I liked the fact that the two Wolverines were fighting over a telepathic redhead. But this whole time, I wasn't really sure what she wanted. And I thought, oh, okay, I'm not expecting the world here, but we'll get to the last issue and we'll at least understand what it was she was trying to do. And then the reveal that she was a robot and that the magic coffin only had an arm inside of it. I don't know. Something turned off in me. And I was just like,
another T2 reference, by the way. Another T2 reference. The whole.
You're right. Yeah. What the fuck? Oh my God, I missed that one.
Yeah.
I did like when Grifter got zapped trying to open it. But I think
after I've done this before, I've absolutely done this before. Don't even worry. And then he cartoonishly gets shot into the other room from electricity. But he's like, no, I'm fine. My power's kicked in. Don't worry about it.
Here's the thing about Grifter. He's very much an action hero, but he's much closer to, say, Ash than Rambo.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh,
and that's what I like about him, too.
I do too. I don't think that's bad. I think that's what makes him an interesting character. If he just came in there and was straight up, I mean, when acted just like Wolverine or Cable or the Punisher or any of the other badasses that were established, even Batman, who would give a shit? But here you got Ash, the superhero. Oh, I'll just jump off this and I'll do 3 flips and it'll work out. Hold on, cigarette time.
Yeah, exactly. And he wears his ridiculous coat and his ridiculous mask, and when he shoots, he's going to hit whatever he's aiming for, but he insists on shooting behind the back and whatever's cool looking. And then he's making jokes to his ancient immortal girlfriend who's just using him, and it always works out for him in the end. So everyone's happy.
Mark Silvestri.
Not the Damonites.
Oh no.
I can't get over. I've read very little ROM in my life because it wasn't really available for so long. But yeah, I cannot get over the fact that I never realized that they were dire wraiths until literally tonight. But this is good timing because Marvel's finally releasing that ROM omnibus after decades. So
yeah, I've got mine. I haven't cracked it yet. I read ROM 2 years ago. I haven't cracked the ROMnibus, as it's called in circles.
Whoa!
But yeah, really good covers. I think there's going to be 3.
Hey man, it's Bill Mantlo, so people should buy it no matter what. I mean, that man never wrote a bad book, but I'm excited to fill that hole in my knowledge.
It's great. Yeah, and it's a great package. It looks good on my shelf.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
Hopefully this also means that we can get a few other things reprinted here and there that have ROM in it while the getting's good. Power Man and Iron Fist number 21 or 22 has ROM in it. So I think it's actually in the ROMnibus, but maybe we could get it somewhere with in a Power Man collection or something.
Yeah,
it would fill in his Power Man issues. So
yeah, it would be nice if they use this opportunity to just get all that stuff back in print for as long as it lasts. I do not think Robert Kirkman is going to be like, I really need ROM, guys. I absolutely need him. I never understood, not the Transformers, not G.I. Joe. I never understood why Marvel doesn't just buy ROM. They own 9/10 of that intellectual property.
Yeah, for sure. It's just a Marvel character as far as anyone's concerned. No offense to anyone who likes ROM from the IDW stuff, but the guy who wrote it, from what I understand, when I read it, it felt very hollow. And from what I understand, he was very hamstrung because he couldn't use a lot of the Marvel stuff. So he's just a Marvel character. Marvel should really just figure out a way to buy him or get a permanent license. You're 100% right. Same with the Micronauts. They're just Marvel characters. They don't really, that's where they belong, for better or worse at this point, which there's also Micronauts omnibuses coming out this year. And then I think at the beginning of next year, we're getting a Godzilla one. So that's going to be pretty cool too.
Man.
Oh yeah. Oh, those Godzilla books. We are way off target here, but
WildC.A.T.s versus Godzilla, go.
Oh man, those Godzilla books that the Marvel put out. I mean, I'm a huge Godzilla fan, and he's having a moment right now. Those issues were great, man. He's Godzilla fighting Shield, Devil Dinosaur, whatever they felt coming up with. Man.
The Avengers,
the
champions. Yeah. He puts on he shrinks to normal size and puts on a trench coat and a hat and takes the bus or the subway.
They've got this world-renowned property, and every issue is just the most insane thing you can think. It's like they're daring Toho to pulp the issue. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. It's beautiful. It's like they got this licensed character. They know he's going to keep being in movies when they're done with him, and they just put him through every insane BS situation at the heart of the Marvel universe that they can come up with. It's a licensed comic in name only. To Dean's point, it's what if Godzilla were created by Jack Kirby for 12 issues? It's beautiful.
It sold well. The only reason they quit is Toho wanted to double the licensing fee.
Those license fees are insane. In case you're wondering why the so-called Monsterverse is just Godzilla and the occasional appearance by a big bug.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, those licensing fees are insane.
Yeah. So they were like, yeah, we're not going to do that. And they just kind of create their own Godzilla. And you see that guy pop up here and there. Yeah. And they never say it's Godzilla, but it is.
To be fair, Fin Fang Foom is really what if Jack Kirby created Godzilla. I mean, that's what it is, right? I mean, Fin Fang Foom is arguably the most well-known superhero-related kaiju, and he's great. I mean, he arrived fully formed, and he's a giant, terrifying green creature that wreaks havoc on a city. So
yeah, and you got to give him weed to make him go away.
You do, or he'll stuff you down his pants. To quote Next Wave.
I'm scrolling through here, just kind of looking through our second part of the prologue as the Wildcats encounter Misery and Dr. Richtenoff.
Let me say this about this. The country of Gamora, right?
Yes.
It must have weird soil, the weirdest soil of all time. 100% made out of trampoline material because goddamn these fuckers are jumping. They don't stop jumping. Everyone's jumping all of the time. You just can't stop. Everyone. Oh, I swung my sword. Now I'm 15 feet in the air and I just did 2 flips. It's made out of trampolines, right?
There's a point in the early part of this book where Maul gets so big that his mind shuts down. I thought that was a neat part of this book where is it Voodoo that talks him out of it, or is it Void? I can't remember.
Voodoo can put a whammy on him to make him change. Ties into her power of being able to see Daemonites. She can also help people control cherubim?
Just from the Bible, like cherubim.
Cherubim, okay.
That's the word. I don't know how to pronounce it.
I'm used to it being spelled with a CH. Cherubim, okay.
Listen, I have never met Jim Lee or Brandon Choi long enough to ask them how they would pronounce it, but I mean...
Yeah, well, they are disrespecting my religion now, so let me tell you.
Ooh.
Absolutely not. Everything's fine. They're not disrespecting anyone's religion, and that wouldn't be mine. I have a religion, but that ain't mine, so no worries. And you can't disrespect my religion, so I worship Jesse. That's what I did.
Well, let me tell you.
Mr. Cyberforce himself. I call him the Cyber God. Our Bible is the complete Cyberforce.
I don't know how I'm going to follow that up. I have no idea. No clue.
No, but she can help them with their powers, I believe, when they start to get out. It feels like kind of a soothing thing. Here's another one of those 4-page spreads.
Shit,
look at it.
It's amazing. It's amazing. That is what Misery has a pointy toe.
Quite.
Ladies that Jim Lee draws, their toes point. They don't do anything else.
That's fair.
I'm not even saying it's a bad thing. I'm not these people, especially on the Unspoken Decade page, are like, you see that guy? He has 38 muscles in his neck. Well, fuck, he's fake. Who cares? If you don't like some art, that's fine because it looks bad or it's subjectively, and is not doing it for me. That's absolutely fine. But some people are going for style. Jim Lee just has a style. That's part of the style. I don't need to see every one of Misery's toes. Why would I? Who cares? Her foot comes out pointed because it looks cool in a 4-page spread. That's what it is.
You understood the assignment, Dean. You really did.
Have you guys seen the stuff that's made the rounds about his
like $25,000 for a goddamn commission or whatever? Well, you also got to think about it like this. A lot of these guys sold their original art in 91, 92, 93, even earlier than that, in a time when he didn't get terrible money for it, but not the money that those pages go for now.
No
so,
way.
Hey, if he missed out on some of the pages from X-Men #4, well, by God, if you want some of my art now, apparently that's what it's worth. I drew that, and I'll draw you this.
Yeah, but also you got to remember he's still running DC. I mean, it's not like he's one of these artists who's paying the mortgage by making commissions. If he set a price point, he's like, okay, that's enough money where my presumably high-paying, super high-equity job, I can take time to draw you a really good picture for $25,000. But clearly he doesn't want people calling him up and being, well, here's $5K, I want Cyclops, or I want whatever else. That doesn't make any sense. He's running DC. He's very high up in the Warner's Discovery echelon. He survived numerous cullings. Dan DiDio's still not there. So whatever he's doing,
I think he gets a 7-figure salary and he gets stock options.
Oh, my God. I would have to assume so. Yeah, I mean, he's been there 25 years.
Quite a while.
And he also still has ownership points and stuff. He still, if you buy the trade paperback of fucking Batman Hush, he's getting royalties off of it. So yeah, if you want him to take time out of his day and draw you Cyclops, well, you're gonna have to pay. And I get that for some people that's too much money, but I mean, listen, and it sounds weird coming from somebody who's an anarchist, but this is labor, man, and that's what he can get for his labor. He should charge what he can get for it. Now we can argue differently as Jim Lee is an executive, but he's drawing the picture. So listen, if I get $25,000 for the shit ass picture I can draw, I'd be drawing.
Yeah, but I'm not paying him $25,000 for him to teach me at an MBA course, right? Though I would be interested in that because he's arguably one of the most successful artists of all time. But I mean, yeah, if you're sitting there and you're like, no, I want a piece of his artwork and I'm doing very well for myself and it's worth it and I want to have it hanging in my home, that makes sense because I think for $25K, it may take a while, but Jim Lee's going to give you a good piece of art. I don't think that's just not something that goes in a portfolio. I think that that's a good trade and I think he is worth it. But again, I think that also gets rid of 90% of the people and he wouldn't have the time to do that. Why would he? If he's going to draw something for the company that he runs and make sure that it's right. To your point.
And he already does that too. So he's got, that's if he draws this for you, that's a variant cover he can't draw for Aquaman Under the Sea #6 or whatever the fuck.
Volume 10, #6.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk real quick just about my favorite parts of the book, and then I'm going to turn it over to you guys. But I have a couple of favorite parts here that stand out throughout this story. Number one is getting through this third part, or this first, I guess the first part of this, and realizing that, oh shit, at some point Maul and Impact are going to go.
Yeah.
And I cannot wait to see what's going to happen. And I would say that Impact, big as he was not bigger than Maul. And Maul, I'm pretty sure, was going to win that fight. But I couldn't wait to see these two tanks go at it.
Well, it kind of shows you what is Impact's honestly biggest strength. He could have won that fight. He absolutely could have, but Impact's always doing a cool thing and saying a cool thing. Remember in the Cyberforce mini, he's like, put down the gun, dude. Somebody might get hurt. That's what he did this time. He's like, you're not big enough to handle me. If he had just ran in really quick because he's got that juggernaut charge ability and got on top of Maul, he might have knocked Maul out before Maul knew what was happening. But instead, he's Johnny Cool. You know what I mean? And that's what cost him, because he's, you got to be bigger. Well, you said that to the wrong motherfucker. And I Impact, I mean, but he writes a bunch of checks, and usually he can cash them, and this one bounced, and it bounced right off his skull.
Yes, it did. Second favorite part of this book is Stormwatch's almost appearance in this battle.
Oh, yeah, man. What an asshole Cannon is. Weatherman 1 looking like Picard, just being like, I don't know about this covert action team. Good stuff. I'm sorry to cut you off, Jesse.
No, I love it. That's just throwing that 1 or 2 pages out there to Stormwatch was I just loved it. And I know that had to have been in the Wildcats book because it was a Jim Lee thing, but regardless, I was extremely excited just to kind of see Stormwatch thinking about getting into this thing, and they never do, but man, there's talk about
they are involved. In a different thing happening in the same place. What a terrible day to be Gamoran, I guess. But yeah, I wish if Strike Force had been a little farther along, or maybe one of the next books, like Darkness or Witchblade, it would have been interesting to see one of them talking about it too. But the Silvestri camp didn't have those. Tom Cow doesn't even exist yet, which I think starts out as Ballistic Studios.
Yes. Oh, yes. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Okay.
That's why I'm here, guys. That's why.
That is why you're here.
It's not just all the
funny things. You knew Aegis Entertainment. I mean, you are just so much knowledge out there.
A font.
Yeah. It's not just the zingers. It's not just the weed.
No.
It's the knowledge.
Yeah.
Definitely the weed.
Oh.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Puff, puff, pass.
Darry, I'm going to let you go here, man, with these 6 issues. What are your thoughts? What do you want to take us on a journey?
First of all, I want to say something. This crossover delivers on its original premise, which is the two guys with claws are going to fight, and they're going to fight a lot, and they're going to hate each other. And I like that because it's not like they get together and they look at each other and they're we have more in common than not, and they wander off. No, they chop at each other, they claw at each other, they do what they say they're going to do. And again, it's a little thing, but I really like it. This is one of those books where the second time I quote unquote read it, I didn't even bother reading it. I just looked at the art. This is an art. These are art books, right? And I mean that in a complimentary way.
Sylvester, this is a summer blockbuster.
Yeah, but Sylvester and Lee are able to tell you a story. I mean, they are clearly, intimately involved with the writing, and the writing is secondary in this case. But that's not a bad thing because they're very good at. They come from the Kirby school of your characters are going to tell you a story, and they're going to do it through motion and pacing and setting and everything else. So it's just wonderful to look at. Again, I have nostalgia for this aesthetic, so I'm definitely about it. There's a set piece, for lack of a better term, in the first WildC.A.T.s issue where Zealot and Grifter are just going into a facility and they end up fighting a bunch of the zombies or whatever we're supposed to call them.
Hunter
and it's
killers.
Beautiful. Yes, exactly. But not the Cyberforce Hunter Killers, which Mark Waid would write a few years later.
Or the Terminator Hunter Killers.
Right. Yeah.
Which came out before this. So watch out.
But I just like that scene because it just felt like the opening to a movie. It felt like Jim Lee was saying, I could storyboard a great action adventure film with these guys, but they're not really superheroes. Yeah, they're both super tough, but he's got guns and she's got swords, and just watch them go. And they come in on a hang glider, and then you can almost hear it. The music swells, and suddenly the rest of the Wildcats show up, and Spartan's there, and he's saving everyone with his generic energy blasts. I thought that was really good. The other thing that I liked about this is
there bioblast somehow, even though he's an android. How does that work?
I tell you, the amount of terms over these 6 issues that are thrown in that don't make any sense whatsoever are astounding to me.
I was just going to say, I have a theory here because, wasn't the busy stuff, and boy, this is, you're right, there's a lot of terms, but wasn't the busy stuff was based off of what Spartan is based off, right?
Yes.
Okay. And we find out that Misery has been able to use her powers, her psionic powers this whole story, and she's a robot. So apparently there's got to be some kind of biotechnology thing that's going on here that makes them actual people with powers. Or something. I don't know.
I'm sure that there's some very interesting pseudoscience to explain it.
Agreed.
Yeah,
and you don't get a whole lot here.
I'm not really knocking it or anything. I mean, it's fine. One of the things I love about Kirby is the pseudoscience, and I think early Image is very much that. Like, if you point any doohickey, one of them give you a bullshit reason for it.
Yeah.
But mostly, a lot of these people's power is kicking.
Oh yeah. Oh, right there you go.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably come up with a very complex reason as to why they're called bioblasts and why that makes sense, but it doesn't matter. It looks cool. His hands glow. They got those little halo effects. That's really what you're going for.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine. Also, I think it sounds better than no one else had bioblasts. That is a Spartan thing. They weren't whatever the other characters were using. And Jim Lee is very cognizant of his branding, right? He wants the Wildcats to stand apart, even if you can see the X-Men DNA, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and also, again, like I said, Spartan's just that quintessential superhero of the time, just the apotheosis. So, yeah, he's going to have some bioblasts. His hands are going to glow. That's part of it. Everybody, when I was creating superheroes around this time and like get a friend of mine to draw them, man, those hands glowed. They had to. They had the head sock, you called it. Everybody did it. Their hands were always glowing. Yeah. I had a bad guy company named Biotech because I thought that was cool. So maybe, it's terrible. But
that's something that a kid would come up with.
Right,
this
of course.
This guy's called Biotech. That makes sense.
Yeah. And I don't remember why, but they were inspired somehow by early Wildcats.
Good.
Okay. All right.
Choice.
One of the other exciting elements of this, just jumping in here. Last thing, I promise I won't interrupt you guys anymore. Just
we're interrupting each other. We're having a conversation, Jesse.
I've never done one of those. The the excitement of another premiere artist drawing another premiere artist's characters.
Yeah.
That really drew me in too. Just knowing that, oh shit, I actually get to see Mark Silvestri's take on the Wildcats and vice versa with Jim Lee and Cyberforce. Right. That was real for me. That was shit that drew me into comics when stuff like that happened.
There were a lot of people in that they did the Image X month, remember?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Which was controversial for retailers. Retailers did not like it, but the fans loved it.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, I'm stepping back. Darry, what else you got there?
No, honestly, I think that's it. I think
does Killjoy have a lot of arms?
No, she only has 2.
No, she she's
I remember that.
going
I'm
very
thinking
fast.
That scene where she was shooting stuff and they drew a bunch of her arms.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
That's what I'm thinking of.
No, I thought that she was just super, super fast.
Okay. Well,
the only other thing I'll say is, man, some stereotypes are based on fact. Every woman in this crossover is drawn exactly the way you stereotypically think of things from this period of time. Yeah. And wow, that hit me because I was going through here and I'm normally not really aware of this, but some of these shots, it's oh man, yeah, it really used to be that.
It is borderline softcore pornography at certain points.
Listen,
which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, again, it's kind of a movie. I mean, but you're right. It's a lot different now.
Yeah. And
even like the secretary for like Lord Imp, who's there for like 2 panels, is like smoke show beyond. Like it looks like she has like a sports jacket on, like a suit jacket, but then she's wearing a bustier under it. What's happening here?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the superheroes or supervillains or whatever. It's literally, oh, you're a woman. I'm going to draw you in this very particular way. I mean, the men are drawn ridiculous too, but they tend to be fully clothed, and you don't show them from those odd angles.
Exactly, that's the big difference.
I say that as
and also the men are drawn unreal, but that's from a male perspective. If you ask women who they're attracted to, generally superhero builds aren't it. I mean, obviously some ladies are, but it would be different. This is a male thing. We want to be big. We want to be, or generally speaking, obviously we're speaking in general types here. So,
and again, I mean, I couldn't love this stuff more. So I'm not nitpicking in any way.
I'm not either. It just is.
It just jumped out at me. It's oh wow, yeah, it really used to be that.
It just is what it is. I was going to say this earlier. When people now complain about these comics, Jesse was saying, people might shit on this art, but this was what it was. This is super cool. Yeah, when I was at this time, I would talk to people about Kurt Swan and Murphy Anderson in the 60s doing some cool Superman stuff, or Bruno Premiani on Doom Patrol, and even Jack Kirby or Wally Wood, and people would be like, fuck that shit. This right here. Do you see this? You see this? Cyberforce. And you have to put things into perspective of what they are. So this is the thing. You have to understand when you read an Image comic from early Image during the Image universe, there's going to be a tremendous amount of gratuity. You have to accept that a lot of this would be like a movie you would see on Cinemax, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And they told you what it was going to be. It just is what it is. Just like 30 years ago when you're like, where are all the splash pages, man? Well, Steve Ditko didn't get to do that and did something different. Some things are wrong and bad no matter what, but we have to remember to contextualize them as well and be like, yeah, they probably shouldn't have sexualized ladies like that so much, but that's what they did. Let's acknowledge that it was bad and move forward as we enjoy this media, as opposed to just getting hung up on it. And it's good we move forward now. Image is one of the most powerful companies for lady creators now. So it's definitely come a long way from the zealot crotch shot we get across 4 pages.
Mark Silvestri changed my life with Inferno. Okay. Because when he was drawing that's where I actually started to
Are we getting this?
No. I wasn't old enough, but I was really drawn in to the way he was portraying his characters in the X-Men Inferno crossover. And I think that was part of it. That was the target audience. They were trying to get 12 to 16-year-old young men primarily to buy this, and it's a way to get them in. It's supposed to be a big fantasy. Now we can still have sexy ladies and sexy dudes, and it can just be more varied, and that's good. Right. Inferno, that Goblin Queen though, she changed her life. I could, we only got another probably 15 minutes before Darry falls asleep, and I could go on about an hour about the Goblin Queen.
Like, that's Madeline later, let alone Madeline prior.
That's beautiful. All right, Dean, you're up, man. What are you thinking of this crossover here, bud?
I've said a lot of stuff already, so I don't have to go already. I get in my shots where they are, when they make sense. But it's a popcorn comic, and I mean that in a good way. I'm going to give it an 84. It's a lot of fun. You go to the movies over the summer, especially around this time. You want to see the Batman Returns. You want to see the Independence Day. Later on, Armageddon. Those type of movies, they were just big. And this feels big. It feels cinematic. And it feels like a big action adventure story where a lot of things just, you accept a couple things that are a little wonky, but mostly if you buy the ticket and you accept it for what it is, you're just going to enjoy the ride. The art is top notch, cannot be better. Everything is done just down to a detail, just crisp and well done. There's some good character development. It's fun to see how these two teams used to be very, very, very intertwined. And it's great that this could remain in print because it was recently reprinted for Cyberforce. It was reprinted 10 years ago in and of itself for DC, but it's also, I think, going to be part of the Wildcats compendium coming up later this year. So it's good. It's good to see. And it's a lot of fun. It's very emblematic of an era. Go in without taking it too seriously and enjoy pointy-fingered guys and ripping people apart and a lot of zap guns left and right. And then in the end, the three-armed guy is going to shake another robot's hand and we're going to go. That's what we've got. They're friends.
All right.
Good for them.
Let me put you guys on the spot here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 issues. What was your favorite cover? All right, and I've got them right here. I can go through them if you guys want to look at them. I know you guys got your own editions there, but I mean, I'll tell you. Let me tell you mine real quick. There, right there. Issue 7 of WildCats, Part 3 of this Killer Instinct crossover. This is my favorite cover of this whole thing, and I mean, we don't get team shots like we have on some of these other covers. This is just Stryker. And this is just Spartan going at it. And I love that Spartan is getting shot and it's just coming right out the back. And Jim Lee's art is just on point. Again, at the height of his powers here. This is some good stuff here. So there you go.
That's my favorite cover too, for all the same reasons.
Okay.
Like, it's cool, it's dynamic. I like the action. I like that it's very representative of what happens in the book. Everything about it is top notch. There's a lot of detail without it feeling too cluttered. And yeah, I mean, somebody's getting shot through the chest. It's great.
That's good. All right, Darry.
That's good. Just get shot.
My favorite was the one that it was a chrome cover. But afterwards, he gives you the real one. I don't remember which one it was. I think it was one of the Cyberforce issues. Do you know what I'm talking about? There was a silver chrome cover. And then
there were chrome versions of all 4 of them.
Right.
Oh, there were chrome versions of all 4 of them. Oh,
yeah, I don't think they were released to the general public. I think they were retailer versions, gold logo.
Somebody posted a picture of all of them, I think, on the Facebook site. I think.
Yeah, they did. I saw them because I've been getting them ready.
Yeah,
all right.
I've been posting a few things about this. There was the reel that I used. That I put these guys on. I've been posting a few other things about it. But someone did post the 4 foil covers.
Okay. Do you remember what issue you said you liked, Darry, or was it just all the chrome ones?
I don't remember the numbers, but yeah, I got a sweet spot for those full chrome covers. It takes me back to seeing it on the rack and going, well, I don't know what that is, but it feels important, so I gotta get it. And seeing it this time around, it was just like, man, I don't know how anyone talked anyone else into this, but I know from personal experience it did work.
All right, guys, we did it. I mean, I think, number one, you could tell how excited we were to talk about this. And it's not just because it was a great story. It was more about the era that this fell in and the time frame that these artists were living in and what was happening on these pages and the excitement of the Image era. That's one thing that'll always define myself as a comic book reader, is getting into the Image universe and the excitement that was around what was going to be happening, what could possibly be happening in the future. Oh my goodness, is what character is going to pop up in what other book. And this was a way for Mark Silvestri and Jim Lee to go, let's grab that comet and write it on out and give these people what they want. Let's give them what they want. And
guys, let's buck the Bronco.
Buck it. The Bronco.
Yeah.
Let the Bronco buck.
They also put out this crazy Killer Instinct tour book. So off the tour. So there's
Really?
I don't think there's what? Yeah, I just made that up. I just made this eBay right now.
Wow, that's crazy.
I'll get them. I don't think it has anything to do with the story. I think it's just like one of those tour books they used to do. Here's some stuff we drew up, and here's stuff that's going to be coming out, and I'll sign it and charge you $20 for it.
All right. Well, I think it's time to close up shop here. We all enjoyed what we read. Any last words?
It was a great comic. Good times.
Right. We had a good time. Good discussion.
Good old Image.
Good old Image. Always a place in my heart. Dean Compton, tell them about the Unspoken Decade.
10 years. We're celebrating the UnspokenDecade.com this year, and we're very active over on the Facebook page. We're doing a little blue sky. Posted 2 things the other day. I'm going to post 2 more things in the next couple of days, so watch out. Oh. But 21,000 followers now on Facebook. So thanks. A lot of you are like, "Oh, you guys have a podcast?" Yeah, this is it. I hope you're listening, because I've been people have been asking. I'm like, "Yeah, I post it every time. Where are you?" Only like 3 of you like it. You weirdos. No, I love everyone.
There's a really
few that I've had to kick out because you won't stop talking bad about Rob Liefeld, which you can criticize his work. That's fine, but we're tired of all the feet and pouches and those comments. If you're man, I don't think Brigade was a solid enough concept to spin out a Youngblood when he started it. Great, legitimate criticism. But if it's the other shit, let's just cut it out. Everybody's done heard it. That's fine. Y'all are all on for the ride, and we're having fun together.
Go and check out all sorts of stuff in the archive. We are over 100 episodes here with the Unspoken Issues podcast, where we focus mainly on 90s comics, but we also have the Source Material Comics podcast, where we talk about comic stories from any era. So right now, I think Mark and I just finished up our discussion of the Mask comics, and our next 3-issue series or 3-episode series that we're going to do is Lois Lane, Enemy of the People. Yes, keep an eye out for that. That's going to be happening here pretty soon. So with that being said, that down there is Darry Waite. Up there's Dean Compton. I'm Jesse Starcher. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
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 Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.